My name is Rachel Adams, and at 33 years old, I never imagined that I would become a widow before even reaching my mid-30s. Just 3 months ago, I buried my husband, Daniel. He had been my partner for 10 wonderful years, my safe place, my greatest cheerleader, and my best friend. Losing him to a sudden aneurysm shattered my world in ways I never thought possible. Still raw with grief, I forced myself to attend my nephew Ethan's first birthday party only days after Daniel's funeral. I thought it would be a small family gathering, something quiet that might distract me from the endless silence of my empty home. But what I did not expect was that my younger sister, Melissa, would drop a bombshell that would change everything I thought I knew about my life and marriage. Standing in the middle of the room, holding Ethan in her arms, Melissa announced that Ethan was not just her son, he was Daniel's son too. As if that wasn't enough, she pulled out a document and claimed it was Daniel's will, one that entitled her and Ethan to half of my $750,000 house. Gasps filled the room. My mother nearly dropped her glass. My father demanded to see the paper. And me? I could barely stop myself from laughing. Not because it was funny, nothing about betrayal is funny, but because I already knew more than Melissa ever imagined I did. Before I tell you how I handled this unbelievable twist, let me ask you something. If you've ever dealt with family drama that left you speechless, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to get very real. How we met. Daniel and I first crossed paths 11 years ago at a charity gala supporting children with rare diseases. I was volunteering at the silent auction table, organizing donations, and chatting with attendees. Daniel, tall and broad-shouldered with an easy smile, caught my eye when he kept outbidding everyone on a particular item, a framed photograph of the New York City skyline at sunset. The room buzzed with laughter as the bidding war continued, and finally, Daniel won the piece. To my surprise, he walked straight to me, handed me the photograph, and said, "You were admiring this all night. I think it belongs to you." His voice was gentle, and his hazel eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. That was Daniel, thoughtful, generous, and attentive in ways most men weren't. We went on our first date the very next evening, and from that moment, we were inseparable. He was a corporate attorney, brilliant yet humble, the kind of man who remembered the names of waiters and security guards and treated everyone with kindness. I was just starting out as an interior designer, still building my reputation. Together, we dreamed big. 8 months later, he proposed to me on a rooftop overlooking the very skyline from that photograph. The sun dipped below the skyscrapers, and with the city glowing beneath us, Daniel asked me to be his forever. I said yes through tears. Building a life. Shortly after our wedding, we stretched our finances to buy a Victorian-style house on the outskirts of Boston. It cost us $750,000, and while it was a financial challenge, Daniel had just made partner at his fame, and I was starting to land bigger clients in interior design. The house needed work, but it had charm. Arched windows, creaky staircases, high ceilings, and a garden where I imagined our future children would play. We spent weekends sanding, painting, and dreaming. It wasn't just a house, it was our canvas for a shared life. We wanted children desperately. For years, we tried, charting cycles, visiting doctors, undergoing endless tests. 4 exhausting rounds of IVF drained our savings and our spirits. Each time, I hoped. Each time, I lost. The last attempt nearly broke me. I remember sitting in the clinic parking lot, staring at the negative results, unable to breathe. Daniel reached across the console, gripped my hand, and whispered, "Rachel, we can still have a beautiful life. You and me, that's enough." I wanted to believe him, and eventually, I did. We redirected our dreams. We traveled to Italy, hiked the Grand Canyon, and filled our home with love even without children. We renovated the house room by room until it became a showcase of both my work and our memories. My sister Melissa. Melissa was always different from me. 4 years younger. She grew up as the family's golden child in many ways, beautiful, charming, and reckless. While I worked hard through school and internships, Melissa bounced from one job to another, one boyfriend to the next. My parents worried about her constantly, often stepping in to rescue her when she made bad financial or personal decisions. That imbalance left scars on our relationship. I was the responsible one, the fixer, the achiever. She was the wild child, always demanding attention. When I married Daniel, Melissa suddenly showed interest in lawyers. When we bought our home, she whined about her tiny apartment until my parents helped her move into a nicer condo. No matter what I accomplished, she seemed determined to compete. 2 years ago, she started dating a bartender named Jason. He was rugged, tattooed, and reckless, exactly Melissa's type. Their relationship was fiery, full of dramatic arguments and equally dramatic reconciliations. When she announced she was pregnant at Thanksgiving dinner, I nearly dropped my fork. Melissa had always mocked me for wanting children, calling it outdated and traditional. Yet there she was, crying tears of joy as she revealed she was expecting. The bombshell. Fast forward to Daniel's funeral. I was drowning in grief, barely holding myself together when Melissa decided to drop her revelation at Ethan's birthday party. She cleared her throat, holding her son in one arm and a folded document in the other. "I need everyone to know something," she said, her voice trembling just enough to seem sincere. Every eye in the room turned toward her. "Ethan isn't just my son. He's Daniel's too. And before he passed, Daniel made sure Ethan would be taken care of. He left a will, one that gives us half of Rachel's house." Gasps echoed through the room. My father demanded to see the will. My mother clutched her pearls. Cousins whispered in disbelief. I, on the other hand, felt a strange calmness wash over me. Because what Melissa didn't know was that I had already started uncovering pieces of a story she thought was hers to control. Instead of falling apart, I simply smiled. And as Melissa waved the papers dramatically in front of everyone, I knew this was just the beginning of a much larger unraveling. I wish I could tell you that Melissa's revelation came as a total shock. But the truth is, something about her story didn't add up from the very start. The way she stood in front of the family, clutching those papers, her voice wavering just a little too perfectly, it felt rehearsed, like a script she had practiced in the mirror a dozen times. That night, after the birthday party ended and most of the guests went home in stunned silence, I sat alone in my kitchen with a cup of tea, staring at nothing. My mind replayed her words on loop. Ethan is Daniel's son. He left us half of the house. I wanted to cry, to scream, to throw something. But instead, I felt strangely steady. Maybe it was the shock numbing me, or maybe it was something deeper, an instinct that Melissa was lying. My first clue. The first red flag came the very next day. Melissa had left the so-called will with my parents, probably expecting them to pressure me into handing over my half of the house. I asked to see it myself, and when I finally had the document in my hands, my suspicions deepened. The signature at the bottom was sloppy, nothing like Daniel's clean, sharp penmanship. Daniel had been a lawyer. He took signatures seriously. He once told me that the way a person signed their name said more about them than they realized. But this was messy, almost like someone had traced it. I didn't say anything out loud. Not yet. Instead, I scanned the rest of the paper. It lacked the proper formatting I knew Daniel would never overlook. No witness signatures. No notarization. Just a few paragraphs typed in Times New Roman, with dramatic lines like, "To my beloved Melissa and our child, I leave half of my estate." Estate. Daniel never used that word. He would have said assets or property. My husband was meticulous with language. Whoever wrote this didn't know him well enough to copy his voice. Seeking answers. 2 days later, I made an appointment with Daniel's law firm. Walking into the office where he had spent so much of his life was painful, but necessary. His colleague and close friend, Andrew, welcomed me with kind eyes. "Rachel," he said softly, leading me into his office. "How are you holding up?" I managed a faint smile. "I've been better, but I need your help." I slid the supposed will across his desk. Andrew studied it for less than a minute before shaking his head. "This isn't Daniel's work," he said firmly. "He drafted his will with me years ago. I know exactly what it looks like, and this is not it." My breath caught. "So this is fake?" "Absolutely. For one, Daniel's actual will is stored securely with our firm, properly signed, witnessed, and notarized. For another, this doesn't sound like him at all. Rachel, someone forged this." I felt a strange mix of relief and fury. Relief that I wasn't losing my house. Fury that Melissa thought she could manipulate all of us with such a clumsy attempt. "Can I see the real will?" I asked. Andrew nodded, pulling a file from his drawer. He laid it before me, and tears pricked my eyes as I saw Daniel's unmistakable handwriting, his signature precise and clear. The will left everything to me. Our house, our savings, even his life insurance policy. Daniel had trusted me to carry on his legacy. And Melissa had tried to erase that with a counterfeit. The paternity question. But one question still haunted me. What if Ethan really was Daniel's son? The idea of Daniel betraying me that way made me feel sick. Andrew must have seen the worry on my face. "Rachel," he said gently, "I can't speak to the child's parentage. But I can tell you Daniel never mentioned Melissa. Not once. And he was not the type of man to hide something this serious." I wanted to believe that. Desperately. But Melissa's timing gnawed at me. Announcing it right after his funeral, when he wasn't here to defend himself, was too convenient. I decided to dig deeper. Digging into Melissa's story. Melissa had claimed Ethan was born from a brief affair she and Daniel had before he passed. But the timeline didn't make sense. Ethan was just over a year old, and Daniel had been traveling with me during the period Melissa implied. We had vacation photos, receipts, even plane tickets. Still, I needed undeniable proof. Quietly, without telling Melissa, I requested a DNA test. Since Ethan was just a toddler, it wasn't difficult to collect a sample. One of his use pacifiers during a family visit was enough. I paired it with a hairbrush of Daniel's that I had kept. The waiting nearly killed me. Days dragged on like weeks. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach knotted, thinking it might be the lab. Finally, the results came in. My hands trembled as I opened the email. 99.9% probability, not a paternal match. Relief washed over me so strong I nearly collapsed. Ethan was not Daniel's child. Melissa had lied about everything. The betrayal runs deeper. But the question remained, why? Why would my own sister spin such a cruel story, falsify a will, and try to steal half my home? The answer came faster than I expected. A week later, I got a call from a mutual friend who worked at the local bank. She lowered her voice as she spoke. "Rachel, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Melissa's drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out. Loan defaults. Even her condo is in foreclosure. She's desperate." It all clicked. She saw Daniel's death as an opportunity to solve her problems at my expense. And yet, what struck me the most wasn't just her desperation. It was the fact that she thought I wouldn't fight back. That I was so broken by grief I'd let her take everything Daniel and I built together. She underestimated me, setting the trap. Now that I had the DNA results and proof the will was forged, I knew I had leverage. But instead of confronting Melissa immediately, I decided to set a trap. I called her and pretended to be uncertain. "Melissa," I said softly, "I've been thinking about what you said. Maybe Ethan does deserve something. Can we meet to talk?" Her eagerness was almost comical. "Of course. You're doing the right thing, Rachel. Daniel would want this." We agreed to meet at a cafe downtown. I arrived early, recorder in my bag, heart pounding. When Melissa walked in, she looked smug, confident, like she'd already won. I leaned in and whispered, "Melissa, I need to know the truth. Did Daniel really write that will?" Her eyes flickered. She hesitated just a moment too long before saying, "Of course he did. He wanted to take care of his real son." Click. The recorder captured every word. I had her. Melissa thought she had me cornered. That afternoon in the cafe, she sat across from me with a confident smile, sipping her latte as if she hadn't just accused my late husband of fathering her child and tried to rob me of half my home. But what she didn't know was that I had come armed, not with anger, but with truth. The calm before the storm. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I let her talk. People like Melissa couldn't resist the sound of their own voices, especially when they thought they were winning. You know, Rachel, she said smoothly, I never wanted it to come to this. But Ethan deserves the life Daniel would have given him. Half the house is just the beginning. Once I get child support officially recognized, you'll see. It's what's fair. Her words stung, but I kept my face neutral. Fair, I repeated softly, as though tasting the word. Melissa leaned in, her tone lowering into something almost conspiratorial. You've always had everything, Daniel, the house, the career. This is finally my chance to have something too. It was. The jealousy, the resentment, the years of being compared to me, finally spilling out in one bitter confession. I let her finish, then slid a folder across the table. What's this? She asked, frowning. Proof, I said evenly. Proof that Daniel never fathered Ethan. Proof that the will you showed everyone is a forgery. Proof that you've been lying since the moment you opened your mouth. The evidence. Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. Inside were 3 documents. The DNA test results showing Daniel was not Ethan's father. The real notarized will, signed and stored by Daniel's law firm, leaving everything to me. A letter from our family attorney, confirming the forged will was invalid and would not hold up in court. Melissa's face paled as she scanned the papers. This doesn't prove anything, she stammered. I tilted my head. Doesn't it? You see, Melissa, I already spoke with Andrew. He has the original will. And this DNA test. I tapped the paper. It's ironclad. Ethan isn't Daniel's son. Which means you lied to everyone, including Mom and Dad. Her jaw clenched, and for a moment, I thought she might lunge across the table. But instead, she sat back, her eyes narrowing. You think you're so clever, she hissed. But you don't know everything. The final blow. That's when I pressed play on the recorder hidden in my bag. Her own voice filled the air. Of course he did. He wanted to take care of his real son. Melissa froze. The blood drained from her face as she realized what she had just heard. Her lie, captured in her own words, undeniable. I leaned in, my voice calm but firm. I gave you a chance to tell the truth. Instead, you doubled down. So now, Melissa, I'm done protecting you. For the first time, she looked afraid. Family fallout. 2 days later, I gathered my parents and a few close relatives at my house. Melissa arrived, looking tense but trying to mask it with bravado. Why are we here? My father asked, clearly weary from the weeks of tension. Because you all deserve the truth, I said. One by one, I laid out the evidence. The DNA test, the real will, the forged document Melissa had presented. Finally, I played the recording of her false confession. Gasps filled the room. My mother covered her mouth with her hand, tears brimming in her eyes. My father's face turned crimson with anger. Melissa, he said, his voice shaking, how could you do this? To your own sister? To this family? Melissa tried to protest, but the evidence was overwhelming. She sputtered excuses. She was desperate. She was scared. She thought Ethan deserved better, but the damage was done. My parents were heartbroken, not just at her lies, but at the realization that the daughter they raised had been willing to destroy her own sister's life for money. For once, Melissa had no comeback. Consequences. I could have pressed charges. Forgery and fraud are crimes, and I had more than enough proof. But after speaking with Andrew and the attorney, I chose not to, for Ethan's sake. The little boy was innocent. He didn't deserve to grow up with his mother's criminal record hanging over him. Instead, I made Melissa sign a legal agreement, prepared by Andrew's fame, admitting she had forged the will and relinquishing any claim to Daniel's estate. If she ever tried to bring it up again, we would take her to court. Melissa signed it, her hands shaking. She knew she had no choice. The aftermath. In the weeks that followed, the family dynamic shifted dramatically. My parents distanced themselves from Melissa, though they tried to stay connected to Ethan. They were determined not to punish the child for his mother's sins. As for me, I poured my energy into rebuilding my life. I attended grief counseling, leaned on friends, and slowly began to imagine a future without Daniel. It wasn't easy. Some nights I still cried myself to sleep, clutching the pillow where he once lay. But knowing the truth, that he had never betrayed me, that Melissa's story was nothing but a desperate lie, brought me peace. Daniel had loved me. Completely. Unconditionally. That love was the legacy I chose to hold on to, not the pain my sister tried to inflict. Reflection. Looking back now, I realize Melissa underestimated me because she thought grief would make me weak. But grief doesn't just break you, it also hardens you. It teaches you who truly stands by your side and who would exploit your pain. I lost my husband, but I refused to lose myself. And if there's one thing Daniel taught me, it's this. The truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how deep someone tries to bury it. Closing words. So, if you're watching this and you've ever been betrayed by someone you thought you could trust, let my story be a reminder. People will reveal themselves in time. Lies crumble, but the truth endures. And to Melissa, if she ever sees this, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to let your actions poison my heart any longer. Daniel wouldn't want that.